Tell me if this sounds familiar. When you're starting out, if you want to get better video, you feel like you just need to get a better camera, right? But that's absolutely not true. Hey, I'm John Bear, so happy to see your beautiful face. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you 6 tips to make your videos more professional without spending any money. Welcome back. Alright, so my first tip is to stop using autofocus. Autofocus is really cool in theory, you know, let the camera do everything and then you just point and shoot. Unfortunately, autofocus just isn't reliable. It will sometimes hunt for focus, and if you have a clip where all of a sudden it's hunting for focus, the quality of your work is gonna go way down into the sinker. You're basically leaving it to random chance that your clip becomes ruined and amateur. And after I started using vintage lenses and fully manual lenses, I started loving manual focus way more. It sounds scary at first, but once you learn the skill of manual focus and you just learn to operate your camera completely without any sort of training wheels, the confidence you get out of that is just unbeatable. Personally, I take great joy in just focusing. It's a fun part of the process for me. And in the end, you're in full control of the quality of your video. And when you're in full control, that means that it's actually a skill that you can train. Autofocus is not a skill. Like, it's different for every camera. Like, if you get good at using autofocus, then it's not a transferable skill between cameras. Honestly, you'd be wasting your time. And no matter how good you get with autofocus, you're still leaving it to random chance when the focus might just fall. So learn manual focus, like, unless you're shooting vlogs. Because when you're shooting vlogs, it's kind of like an imperfect product anyway, and you know, the focus hunting is fine. Number 2, understand frame rates and when to use them. Tell me if this thought is familiar.
I'm gonna film everything in 60 frames per second, so I can slow down the clip if I want to, but then also just keep it in normal speed if I want to.
When I first started out, this is the way I was thinking. I shot everything in 60 frames. The problem with this is that if you want to slow down 60 frames, you need to have a timeline that's 24 frames, 25 frames, or 30 frames per second. And so when you have that 24 frames per second timeline and you force a 60 frames per second clip into it without slowing it down, then you're gonna get a choppy result and you're gonna lose all the motion blur. So is it worth it for your whole video to be choppy and like lacking motion blur just so that you can use slow motion for those few occasions? Please be careful not to shoot everything in slow motion. I see this a lot with travel films where you're just watching sequences of clips in slow motion and it feels odd. It feels like I'm looking into a different world where everything is like in slow motion. This is a slow-mo world. Having everything in slow motion just disconnects the viewer from the world. So having those real-time shots in 24 frames per second is so important. My recommendation is to know your frame rates and use the appropriate one for the type of shot you're going for. So here's a quick rundown on frame rates. I might make a full video for this in the future, but here it is. 24 frames. This is what you use for real time. This is what you want to use when you want your viewer to be inside the same world as the character on screen. It shows the actual speed of things and it just feels like it's the real world. 60 frames per second. This is what you want to use when you're slowing down human movements, just slight movements. It makes everything look a little more dreamy, and it's, for me personally, this is the slow motion that I use most of the time. And then 120 frames per second slow motion. This is when you're filming smaller things like rain or dust, or like in this tea commercial that I was filming these tea leaves falling. When filming something so small and tiny, 60 frames per second wasn't slow enough. So for 120 frames per second, you can film fire, water, like all these things. Or you can also use it for like really fast human motion. Like, let's say you're filming an MMA fighter throwing a punch. You know, there's a lot more that goes into talking about frame rates, so let me know down in the comments if you want to see a full video on this topic. Number 3, fill the frame. So this is a composition tip. The idea of filling the frame is to not leave any dead space in the frame. You want your subject to just fill it perfectly. It makes every shot feel way more intentional. But yeah, you're not Hollywood, you're not planning every single shot, so sometimes filling the frame perfectly can be difficult. So what I can recommend is shooting in a high frame rate like 4K, and then in post you can crop in and just recenter the frame on the subject. It just looks way more professional. Tip number 4, consider the horizon. So this is another composition tip, but this one really eluded me for a long time. When I first started filming, I used to just point my camera down on things. But most subjects that you film will look the best when you go down to their field. That's why I say consider the horizon. And the biggest benefit of filming with the horizon in mind is that it gives your whole image just more depth. It gives it background. Let's say I was filming something on a table and I was looking down at it. all you're gonna see is a table. But if I go down to the level of the item that I'm filming, then all of a sudden you can see depth in the background, you can see the item standing on the table like it's a character. Personally, I think photographs look best when your subject breaks the horizon. Especially nowadays with selfies, you know, people like to point it high up because, you know, high angles make them look cuter, shows less imperfections. But everything that's outside of you in the frame is just gonna be the ground. It's not very nice to look at. Consider the horizon, show the background, show the depth. Tip number 5, make your shots quick and concise. Keep a nice rhythm to your shots, especially when you're making video content for the internet. People get bored very quickly. Try editing with each shot lasting for only about a second. If a shot lasts for more than 3 seconds, the viewer has already taken in everything that's in the shot. So unless the shot is moving or something is going on in the shot, try to keep it shorter. Keeping your shots short and concise just gives your video much more energy. Number 6, don't overdo the color grade. I know, when I was starting out, I was so excited to jump into my editing software and just slap on some like crazy colors. But honestly, when you're color grading, less is more. I would recommend you to keep things somewhat realistic with your color grade. It's been quite trendy recently to make everything like teal and orange or whatever. Again, it's the same problem with the slow motion. You feel like it's a different world. You're looking into a different world and you're just not part of it. You just don't connect with the content as much. Keeping your color grade somewhat realistic helps the audience connect with the world way better. Alright, so that's it for my 6 tips on how to make your videos more professional without spending any money. Every tip is a little surface level, so if you want me to go deeper in any of the tips, just let me know down in the comments. If this video was helpful to you, then hit that like button. Maybe share it with a friend. Subscribe if you haven't already. That's the best way to support the channel. I'm John Bear and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.